Welcome to the Vermilion Podcast, a free audio library of business strategies, creative inspiration, and industry knowledge for actors, filmmakers, writers, and anyone looking to activate their creative potential. I'm Misha Calvert, a writer-director who helps artists build the careers that they dream of. I really hope that this podcast inspires you in some way. Thanks for tuning in. I have a guest on the show today, and I am utterly flabbergasted that you responded to my email, Tom Fontana. But I'm so delighted, and I'll give a little bit of intro so that people know who you are. Tom Fontana is a writer, a showrunner, a producer. He's credited by many people as one of the most influential forces in television. So he basically is the grandfather of prestige television. He wrote and produced shows including St. Elsewhere, Homicide: Life on the Street, Oz, The Philanthropist, Copper, and Borgia. He has 3 Emmys. He has 4 Peabodys, 3 WGA Awards, 4 Television Critic Association Awards, the Cable Ace Award, the Humanitas Prize. He's also currently president of the WGA East. Did I get all that, Tom?
That sounds about right. Yeah.
Incredible. He also teaches and mentors screenwriters, which is lucky for me because if he wasn't that kind of very kind and generous person, he would never have agreed to come on the show. So
When I was a starving playwright, somebody took pity on me and mentored me. So I'm just giving back what was given to me.
amazing. And I guess my first question is, given your decades and decades of contribution to culture and entertainment and television, how in the heck have you been able to accomplish so much in one lifetime?
I would say blind luck and utter stupidity. I have been very blessed in the course of my career that either opportunities presented themselves or I was able to excite people with the power to allow me to produce the things I wanted to do. And in terms of stupidity, I've just always been too stupid to know I shouldn't try to do the things that I thought were made a lot of sense to me, but didn't always make sense to anybody. I'll tell very quickly when I had the idea to do a show about a prison, I pitched it to the broadcast networks, NBC, ABC, CBS, and they all looked at me like I had 3 heads. And luck would have it that HBO was looking for its first drama series. And a friend of mine found that out and said, there's somebody stupid enough to do your prison show. And I flew out to LA and I pitched it and they said, let's do it. So, like I said, I was too stupid to think. I was so stupid, I thought everyone would want my prison show. And I was lucky that somebody actually ended up wanting it.
And was that the first time that you pitched a TV show?
I had been working, well, it's a little complicated, but Homicide, which was based on David Simon's brilliant nonfiction book, Homicide: A Year on the Killing Streets, Barry Levinson had bought the rights, and NBC wanted him to develop a cop show based on the book, though none of them had actually read it. And so I was the one who went over to NBC because I knew them all from St. Elsewhere to pitch the show. Paul Antonazio wrote the first episode. And so what I say complicated, I mean, I was pitching David Simon's book so Paul Antonazio could write the pilot. And anyway, it worked. Thank God.
You have my dream job of TV creator and showrunner. Can you explain to some of the folks in my audience, which is a lot of actors, who don't understand what a showrunner does? Can you explain what a showrunner does? And maybe if that's changed from the 80s, how it's changed?
The only way it's changed is it's gotten harder. But but The thing about being a showrunner is you almost have to have two personalities. It's kind of a Jekyll Hyde thing. On one hand, you have to be this creative force with a vision. This is the show we're going to make, and you have to galvanize all of the creative juices of the other writers, the actors, the directors, the designers. And then there is this other head of business where you have to keep an eye on the budget. You have to negotiate the budget. You have to keep your eye on the budget. And so you have to know what everything costs. Lumber. Oh, the price of lumber just went up because of whatever reasons. And suddenly the budget you had last week is not as accurate as it needs to be. So I'm constantly every week getting reports from the line producer telling me where we are financially. The thing is, I never expected to be in that job. I'm just in my mind, first and foremost, I'm a writer and I don't want to be bothered with all those details. But I've had to learn and I've had to understand that the money, Bruce Paltrow, who was my mentor, said, you have to treat the money as it's yours, as if it was yours.
Yeah.
And that very wisely made me think this is how I have to approach that part of the job. And I think a lot of writers don't have the interest in doing both. They want to be, oh yes, and we're gonna do a scene in the middle of a volcano while it's erupting, and the helicopters will be flying in, and there'll be buzzards and a giant and the Pope, you know. Um, and you go like, yeah, okay, but what's it going to cost, you know? And but Bruce was a very good teacher. He taught me how to do it.
Wow. I can really relate to that because as a writer director, I've basically only produced my own material for the past 10 years.
Wow.
So less of a gun for hire and more of a psychopath. But as a result, I really know how to stretch a dollar. Like, my God. So I think that's so smart of just starting to get in the habit of thinking that every dollar that has to be spent is your own dollar, even if it's not.
Yeah, well, it's usually definitely not in my case because there's usually a studio involved and a network involved. But if you go over budget too many times and they then go, well, we're not getting the kinds of response that makes the show worth spending this kind of money. You know, I was trained by the Jesuits, so we're going to shoot on time, we're going to shoot on budget. So,
Disciplined.
well, disciplined, but also coming out of the fact that the kinds of material that I want to do, it's not typical. You know what I mean? You know, if I said, oh, I want to do CSI Pittsburgh, well, that would be, they'd go, oh, okay. And see, this was what a CSI costs. But when you say, I want to do a show set in the Renaissance, they're like, whoa, that's going to cost, they're going to need horses and gowns and, you know, so you have to stay close to the budget in order to make
Yeah.
them not feel like they're making a mistake by producing the show.
Yeah, you're already taking a creative risk. You can't ask them to take too much of a financial risk
Right,
at the same
exactly.
time. Your body of work, which is one of the more extraordinary bodies of work, I think, for a single person in television, deals with some pretty extraordinary material. So, man after my own heart, a lot of violence, a lot of sex, the extremities of human nature. Did you have an intense childhood or do you just have an intense imagination?
I did not have an intense childhood. I actually had we went from being poor to being middle class over the course of, I don't know, a decade. But the kids were never meant to feel lesser than anyone else. And so I think there's a part of me that thinks, yes, there is probably some deep-seated trauma that I'm trying to work out,
Yeah.
but I'm afraid that if I figured that out, I would never write again. So I'm just going to let it. be what it is and keep going till I drop.
Tennessee Williams said you either lead an extraordinary life or you write an extraordinary life. I don't know if I agree with
Well,
that, but
I don't know if I do either, but to a certain extent. I think for me, what I write is the human condition, which is something I have experienced over the course of my life. And yes, okay, this character is in a homicide unit and this character is in a prison, but he's or she is still a human and has needs and has confusions and has loves and hates. And so what I find myself is creating a character and then putting them in a place that has obstacles.
Mhm.
You know what I mean? So that they're challenged. Either their skills are challenged, or their beliefs are challenged, or they are physically challenged.
Yep. How do you decide what to focus on when you're taking on a new project or, you have so many ideas. Like how do you
Yeah.
pick one?
If someone's paying me, that's the one.
Yeah.
If no one's paying me, then the one with the loudest voice.
Mm.
You know what I mean? Because we have these characters that are going like, hey, 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 pay attention to me. Don't pay attention to him. I'm the one you should be writing about. And so I've learned to listen to those voices, if only just to get them out of my head and on a piece of paper.
Yeah, for sure. How do they speak to you? Just kind of the fringe of your consciousness or in dreams or when you sit down to put pen to paper?
It's usually over the course of a day, I will get a notion of some kind, something that a character would do or say or feel. And then I go, okay, I don't know what that is, but it's over here now. And it's coming over here. And there's another one over here. So I don't know. I do this thing when I am writing a specific project. I do this thing, which I've developed over the course of my writing career, which is just before I go to bed, I think about the first scene I have to write in the morning. I don't think about it a lot because then I won't go to sleep at all. But I just go, oh yeah, the thing with the banana and the goat. Yeah, I have to write that scene tomorrow. And I'll go to bed and I'll go to sleep. And a lot of times, the last dream I have in the morning is the beginning of that scene,
Mm.
which means I have to get up out of bed very quickly and get to my desk very quickly before I forget, because we all forget our dreams or some parts of the dreams. So a lot of times it is a dream.
I love that. And I teach as well. And I tell screenwriters and makers of film and TV that the subconscious is just doing way much more of a heavy lift than the conscious
Mm.
brain. So if you can just do that trick of falling asleep on it or waking up on it or showering on it, the
Mhm.
subconscious will come forward and be just much better at the job than the conscious brain usually.
Yeah. I have so many wet pieces of paper from ideas I got during the shower, while showering.
Totally. You just got elected president of the WGA East.
Yes, I did.
What's that like? That's so, congratulations.
Yeah, well, we'll see if it's congratulations or condolences. Well, this is a very important next 2 years for the Guild,
Yeah.
for both guilds, the Writers Guild West and the Writers Guild East, and for the industry. We're in such a contraction in terms of film, television, and streaming that a lot of writers are out of work. We have our broadcast news members who are getting leaned on by these billionaires who are buying the companies. CBS News specifically this week.
Yeah.
And we have our online media members who are also being, their companies are being sold and then there are layoffs. So it's a tough time for everybody. Not that there haven't been tough times in the past, but it's something we really have to concentrate on to help our members. I mean, we're not a hiring hall like a regular union. We don't
Mm,
You can't sit in the lobby and wait for a posting of a job,
hmm
but we can make the contracts fair. We can deal, which one of the things we're dealing with obviously now is AI, which, a lot of writers are saying I hate it. I'm no fan of it, but I think we would be wise to try to tame it as opposed to build barricades to keep it out. We're not going to be able to keep it out.
hmm
And then there's other things. YouTube is suddenly a phenomenon because it's getting more views than Netflix, yet they're basically ripping off all the creative people because they don't pay us anything for
Yeah.
our material. I have TV shows on YouTube. I've never seen a dime before. And, all the late night writers, because a lot of people like me don't stay up till 11:30 to watch Colbert or Seth Meyers. I watch them all on YouTube
Yeah.
and before I go to bed. So there's a lot of issues out there. And I'd be wrong to neglect free speech, which is clearly um, being threatened on so many different levels. So yeah, it's the best of times. It is the worst of times, and I find myself being the president of the guild.
They are lucky to have such a mind at the helm right now. And I mean, I guess I want to thank you for your service.
Well, I appreciate that. My attitude is it's a union, and we are all in it together. I alone, unlike a certain man who claimed he could do it alone,
Hmm.
I alone cannot do it.
Yeah.
So this is really all about solidarity. This is about the union members coming together, East and West, with SAG-AFTRA,
Hmm.
with the DGA, with the Producers Guild,
With Gavin Newsom.
with Gavin Newsom, yeah, and every governor every legislature that we can make understand the value, not only just the value of what we do, but the value of the people in our union.
Hmm.
Because most of the people in the Writers Guild East are, you know, people with families and mortgages or rents or
Yeah.
school tuitions and stuff. They're not Tom Cruise or some, they're not dancing around, flying off to Ibiza or someplace.
Yeah. Yeah. Where do people go who have free time? It's been so many years since I've um
I go to a bar, but that's just me. So.
so yeah, what is your day to day like? I mean, for someone who is so extraordinarily accomplished, like what's a day in the life of Tom Fontana?
Well, I get up at 5 a.m., which I have been doing every day since I was roughly 16 years old to write. And I'll tell you why very quickly. When I was 16, my parents connived to get me into the Jesuit high school that I went to. They had four other kids going to school, so they couldn't really afford for me to go there. So my father convinced the priests to let me work as part of my tuition, so I worked in the kitchen. Classes started around 8:45, and probably the kitchen was open to the students at 8, and so I had to get there at 7 to help the cooks get the food together. And so I would get up at 5 to write for an hour so then I could get dressed and walk to school and work in the kitchen. So which pissed off my two older brothers because we shared a room, and I would get up at 5 and turn on the light, and they would throw things at me, and because I was waking them up. Anyway, that's how I started getting up at 5 a.m. And I've just maintained it. Even when I became the boss, I thought, well, you don't have to get up at 5 anymore. You're the boss. And I was like, no, it's really a blessed time to write,
Hmm
5 a.m. You
Yeah.
know?
Chekhov will get up at 4
Yeah,
before his medical practice.
yeah.
But that's so interesting because there you were, basically a child going to school and participating as a a member of this institution, shoulder to shoulder with any of the other students. And then you were simultaneously working and literally like giving the food to feed all of these other students. So you were working for the school, but also one of the members of the school. And I think that that metaphor of being like a contributing laborer and also someone who is kind of more of a managerial role is that's like carried through to seemingly every other thing that you've ever done.
Well, the only thing is I wasn't managerial in my job at the school. I was the bus boy. I was the Tom, stir this.
I think that's cool. I mean, serving in the cafeteria, like literally feeding your peers.
Yeah.
That's
Well,
badass.
a lot of them weren't my peers. They were a lot richer than I was. It was a
Ah,
school. I mean, it was an expensive school, and but they were. Listen, I don't want to make it sound like I was Oliver Twist. It's a great school, and I had great
mhm.
classmates. And you used the word discipline. I mean, that's what I learned
Yeah,
was the discipline. Like, okay, if you're going to do the thing you love, how do you make that happen every day?
yeah.
You know?
A devotional practice.
Yes, yeah. In
That,
fact, when I was broke and then years later, living in New York as a failed playwright, I was like really, I was sleeping on people's couches. People were so generous. And I went into a church and I knelt down and I said, God, if you could just let me be paid to be a writer, I promise I will write every day of my life for the rest of my life.
wow.
And the only thing I can tell you is don't make deals with God because how do I get out of this? You know what I'm saying?
Yeah,
I can't renegotiate this. Like, yeah, no, no, no. Okay, now, how about if it's every Thursday?
yeah. We don't want to know what happens if you renege on that deal.
Yeah, if suddenly lightning would smite me,
Yeah. I heard that you don't use a computer and that you write longhand on legal pads. Is that true?
I absolutely write a longhand on legal pads. Yeah.
That's incredible. Why do you do that?
I never learned to type, but I did learn to write. So it felt like, I will say this, there is something incredibly sensual about having a pen in your hand and a yellow piece of paper. It's your heart, it's your body, it's your soul, all kind of touching and communicating. And the few times that I tried to write on a computer, I felt very distant from the writing. I felt
Hmm.
like, and plus I kept deleting by mistake, which I mean, kind of, there's a joy to reading a page that you've written and knowing it's complete crap and crumbling it up and throwing it with all your might across the room.
Hmm.
It's very satisfying. Whereas if I was throwing a computer every time I wrote shit, there'd be a lot of broken computers.
Yeah. Who is that producer that got done for throwing computers? Not Harvey Weinstein, the other one.
Oh, Scott Rudin, maybe?
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. You Scott Rudin.
Yeah. God help me, no.
Yeah, you make me think of the 54% of Americans who do not read above a sixth grade level
Hmm.
and how much higher that number is going to be when Chat GPT is ubiquitous.
Yeah. Another group that I'm involved with, which is attached to the Writers Guild East, is a group called the Writers Guild Initiative. And one of the things we do is encourage reading because I read this study that said if a young man or woman stops reading in high school, they never read again. So we've been developing, we have an ongoing programs to engage students in high school with the love of reading. I mean, how successful We are, I don't really know because it's not the kind of thing we then call them and say, "So, you're still reading?" But there's a part of us that thinks we can just turn on a light. Maybe they'll keep the light on.
That's beautiful. You do so much mentorship and education and just helping of people and artists. What do you find satisfying about it? And what's like an example of somebody that you really like to mentor? Like, what are the traits in somebody or a young writer that you appreciate?
Well, in terms of writers, I love individual voices. I love the uniqueness. There are certain showrunners who hire writers wanting them to sound exactly like them. And I'm not being critical of that. That's a way of doing a television show. For me, I think of it as an orchestra, and I play the tuba, and I can play the tuba pretty well, but I can't play a violin, and I need somebody to play the violin. And so one of the other jobs as a showrunner is to put together a team of writers who each are brilliant in their own kind of writing.
Hmm.
And my job then becomes to take their work and shape it into a TV series because it has to fit a kind of pattern. Though, if you look at some of the shows I've done, like Homicide, you can see that we basically were like, well, we don't have to do the same format every week. Sometimes the body is at the beginning of the show, and sometimes it's at the middle of the show, and sometimes there's no body at all. Or you take a show like Jim Yashimura wrote an episode called The Subway,
Hmm.
in which a man, he's waiting to go to work, and a man, he falls in between the track and the subway car, and he has, in real life, somebody that happens to has about 45 minutes to live. And so he wrote this brilliant episode about Andre Brower's character basically starting out trying to figure out who pushed him, interviewing the victim, the murder victim, and eventually comes to realize that that's not his job. Detective's job at that point is to help this man die.
Wow.
And I would say 90% of the episode was in the subway. And we only went out every once in a while because two of the other detectives were looking for the girlfriend. But that is not, that's not a standard format for an episode of a TV show. But that's the kind of things we would do on a regular basis because it was a more interesting way to tell the story than if we had just, bum bum,
Yeah.
you know.
Was that the first time that procedurals had subverted their format?
I'm not enough of a scholar of
Mm,
television to be able to answer that. I think back in the day, shows like Naked City would do that kind of thing,
mm,
but I can't really speak to it. I guess, in a funny kind of way, we actually never thought of ourselves as a procedural. We
mm,
always thought of us as this sloppy, sloppy drama that, it was sloppy because life is sloppy.
mm.
And we were like, we can't tidy it all up because it's a television show.
God, aren't those just words to live by? Wow. And are you working on anything coming up?
I am, but I'm not going to speak of it.
We just know to look out for it and watch it when
Yeah.
it comes out. Because it sounds like over the whole course of your long, beautiful career, the writing has been good enough and undeniable enough that networks have been willing to take chances on you. Do you
Yes.
stand by that? Do you recommend that as a strategy for writers?
Well, listen, it depends why you want to be a writer. If you want to make $1 zillion, own a Jaguar, then then write commercial hits. There's no sin in that. That's just a choice. And then there's stupid people like me who just think, oh, I should just that's kind of weird. I got to write about that. So I don't know. There is no right or wrong. There's just your life. There's just your choice of how to be a writer. I think the key is to be as honest in your writing as you can be, regardless of the kind of thing you're writing. Can CSI Pittsburgh be about the human condition? Yes. What level of complexity are you going to give it?
Yeah.
There actually isn't a CSI Pittsburgh, is there? I keep saying it like there is, but I don't think there is. Maybe I'll
I
pitch that next.
I forgot that Pittsburgh existed until you mentioned it, actually. But yeah. So it seems like you write a lot about the world around you and people and things that you've known. And I mean, is there a lot of research that goes in? How
Oh
much
yeah,
research?
I do tons and tons of research. I love research. I'm a kind of failed historian. That's the thing, but yeah, I love the research because you always find stuff that you weren't looking for that is more interesting than what you were looking for.
How do you research though without, being not so tech savvy? Like, is it just the long, hard way?
I have these things called books.
Whoa.
Yeah, I know. I know it's shocking, but that's what I use. I use books.
Wow. I just think you're the coolest. I hate the research personally as a writer. I don't hate it. I heard there's two kinds of writers. There's those that would rather write about anyone but themselves, and then there's
Mm.
people who only write about themselves in one form or another. So I'm that latter category. So my research is kind of unearthing of my own experiences and then putting them into other people's bodies. But
Well, that is extraordinary. That's to me that's a gift. I would say I write about parts of me, but I also write about other people that I've experienced over the course of my life. Yeah,
well, you
I
have
think
three Emmys, so maybe I should try it your way.
that's well, again, who knows what's luck and what's the whole thing about awards is that when I was nominated the first time, I was like, oh my God, and I won, and I was like, oh my God, this is so, oh my God. And then I was like, man, what does it actually mean? It doesn't really mean I'm the best writer. And I'm the best writer this year, but next year I won't be the best writer. I mean, it's a false value system that if you buy into it
Mhm.
too seriously, it owns you. And so, I'm happy to have them. I won't give them back. But they don't really define my career in my mind. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I mean, I have a picture of one on my desk, so I do know what you mean, and also I still want one.
Okay. No, no, everyone should have one. I just saying that the wanting ends up being more than
Mm,
the having,
yeah,
if
and
that
also live by the sword, die by the sword.
and drink a lot of bourbon and drink more bourbon. That's the heart of the thing. But oh, one thing I wanted to bring up is that David Laundra, who you met, he and I have started a Substack channel
Oh,
called Tom Fontana Presents. And what we're doing is what's great about Substack, which I didn't really have much experience with until now, is that you can do anything you want on it.
yeah.
So we started out with a podcast between Mark Ryder, who played Cesare Borgia on my series Borgia, and I talking about what we were going to start presenting. And the next thing we presented was an audio play that Mark did that I wrote. And then the next thing is a short story that is told from the point of view of the sister of Mark's character in the first piece. Then there's a short film, which has Mark's character going through a kind of a Black Mirror experience. So to me, it's very exciting. We've got a lot of things coming up that we planned. We're going to do a whole bunch of Twain stuff, Mark Twain stuff, and my friends who are incredibly talented and I'm asking them to give me their short films or their poems or their whatever. And we're going to put it on this Tom Fontana Presents. And because right now there's so few people working
Yeah.
that what we want to do is offer them a place to express themselves.
Hmm.
And we're also going to do, as I've implied, I like to drink bourbon. We're going to do a podcast called On the Rocks, where I drink bourbon with a friend of mine and we talk about life. And so I just think, given that you expressed an interest in the kinds of thing I'm working on, that's something that I find very exciting because possibilities are endless.
And so everyone should go like and subscribe to Tom Fontana Presents on Substack and look out for On the Rocks, his podcast where he basically just records hangouts with friends while they
And
drink.
and drinks, yeah, yeah,
Yes.
yeah.
Very good. We love that. Do you have any parting words for aspiring filmmakers and writers, and especially given that the new generations coming up, they don't necessarily see writing as a standalone thing. There's mixed media and content creators, quote unquote. They're just doing everything. They're doing it all. So any advice to this new generation?
I think you just said it. I think you have to try everything. And, to bring up his name again, Mark Ryder, he and a bunch of friends of his from London have created a podcast series. The episodes are like 2 or 3 minutes long. And he's going to do a one-man show in London. I think that, especially for actors, you have to keep acting. Well, that's true of all of us. Writers have to write regardless of what's going on. And it's funny. And this is the last thing I'll say. I'm 74 years old and I am as curmudgeonly set in my ways as any 74-year-old person is. And yet I am still fascinated by the changes that are going on. I was fascinated. I came from broadcast television. Suddenly there was cable and I was doing Oz. There was streaming and I was doing Borgia. This Substack thing, I don't know. I just think if a door opens,
Yeah.
run to get through it. There are so many possibilities, and I think it's a opportunity for young creative people to just have fun and say what you need to say.
That sense of adventure and curiosity is so beautiful. And my own dad is your age, and I've given up on him listening to my podcast, but if he were to listen to this episode, I would say this is right on, Dad. You can be curious and adventurous at any age and never ever stop.
Yeah, it's the truth. So I'm very lucky and I'm very excited to see what the future holds and what other people come up with and create.
Absolutely. Tom, I can't thank you enough for
Oh,
being
it's
on the show.
my pleasure. My
Thank you.
pleasure. All right.
Everyone go and rewatch Oz and all of his other works, Saint Elsewhere, dig into the vaults on this brilliant.
Homicides on Peacock.
Okay.
Oz is on HBO Max. St. Elsewhere is somewhere. I can't remember where. But they're all out there somewhere. God knows.
Awesome. Well, you're just such an icon. So thank you so much,
Oh,
Tom.
The Vermilion podcast is sponsored by Vermilion, a home for artists. We offer classes, coaching, and community for creatives and innovators in the arts. If you're ready to find your voice and build the life of your dreams, we're here to support you every step of the way. Check out clubvermilion.com and schedule a free call today.